I don't really think I wasted any time being scared. You were there, and you just watched the sky. If it's daylight, you watch the sky damn close. In case there was some German fighters up there. And after dark, it was a little bit different, except and of course, the amazing thing about the German ack was it was a fabulous. Of course, the Germans were always really smart with this kind of stuff. Can you imagine? They fired at you at 20,000 feet or 18,000, and they fired with boxes of four guns firing together, and the fuses were all set for them to explode at the height that you were. So a box of them would come up, and if you happened to be in the middle of it, you were on your way down.
William Parfitt joined the Royal Canadian Air Force when he was 18 years old, was a tail gunner for planes called the Avro Lancaster. The Lank, as it was called, was used to bomb Nazi-controlled Germany. Parfitt recalls when your name was up on the board, it was time to go. There was no questioning it.
I can always remember, you used to sometimes, when they were short, some gunner got sick or something, you had your regular crew. Then you'd have to be on the spare gunners list. And I went on the spare gunners list. My name came up on it, and you had to turn out for that crew. You see, they were flying, you had to be there. So the pilot was a good pilot, of course. So we get to, and we're flying this is after dark. And at that time, the Allies were then breaking into France. So when we flew in, we were actually crossing over the firing lines. And at that time, they were using those little things they fired over, buzz bombs. And they could see them because they had an exhaust, you see. So when they were crossing the lines, all of the light aircraft down below were shooting at these buzz bombs. And it was just, after night, you can imagine what it'd be like. So anyhow, this pilot I was with, we got up and he dropped his bombs, and then he flipped over and got out of there fast. And he said, "We're getting out of here." And he drove down about 8,000 feet. And you could see the front lines because they had all the lights, the guns shooting out these buzz bombs, trying to get them, you see, before they went to England. And so we were coming down, and I could see this great big cone of guns firing with down below, and we just skinned over it and got out of there and flew back to London or to England. It was amazing that the Germans could fire a battery of they'd fire about 4 guns, and they'd be spaced out, and when they all exploded when they hit the altitude that you were flying at. Amazing.
He didn't think twice about going to war and recalls his conversation with his parents beforehand.
They wouldn't have reacted because my father was a veteran of the First War, and that was the thing to do. I got a call up when I was 18, so that's when I went to the forces. And I was making model airplanes, and I knew about airplanes, and so I joined the Air Force. I didn't join the Army. I joined the Air Force. That's where you were going to go. You were going to fight the war. So I went and trained, and I trained in Prince Edward Island That's where I learned to fly in a plane and operate a machine gun. Just a pilot and one guy sitting in the back with a machine gun shooting at a drogue. And then when we went overseas, you had to be retrained over there, and eventually ended up on a rear turret of a Lancaster with 4 machine guns. I had friends that I used to swim with when I was at the lake up here. Well, they didn't join the Air Force. They joined the Algonquins, and they went overseas. They never came back. I used to swim with them, and they never came back.
42,000 men and women of Canada's armed forces died during the war, in which just under 23,000 were Army, 17,000 were Air Force, and 2,000 were in the Navy. Over 54,000 were wounded and just under 9,000 were taken prisoner. Parfitt was lucky to have made it back alive. He met his wife Sheila while stationed in England.
She came to the dances with her sister, you see. And that's where we met. And I found out where she lived. And so I went one day to sort of, when I had some time off, and they didn't have phones, you see. You couldn't phone anybody, only in special places. And so I went, and the lady came to the door, her mother came to the door. Oh, I said, I just came to see where Sheila lived, and I said to take her out. Well, she knew who I was because I was flying with her brother-in-law. We started going out and going to dances and things, and I gave her $300, and I said, when you get old enough, I said, get on the boat.
Well, I don't know how I did it. I was a very shy, quiet person, and I've been raised in a quiet home, and all of a sudden I get on a boat and come over here. But I've never really regretted it because I've loved Canada and I loved being a farmer's wife. And
Sheila recalls what life was like in England. She was 13 years old when the war began.
we could see the planes come in. He was ILL, and of course sometimes 3 or 4 wouldn't come back. I mean, I lived all through the war, so I can really identify with Ukraine and know what it's like. They don't, you know, it's very important to hold on to your freedom. And if we hadn't, we really struggled. You know, Britain wasn't ready for the war. At Dunkirk, we thought we were done for, and I was about 12 or 13 then. But I was old enough to know what was going on.
She discusses when the two met and how it felt knowing Bill was in combat.
In the end of the war, it wasn't quite as bad, but he was on like a few bad raids like Dresden and that. But at the end of the war, he was dropping food on Holland. I mean, we were very relieved when the war was over. Can you imagine what it was like on VJ Day?
The life we enjoy today is because of the sacrifices that were made by the men and women who fought for it, something Sheila hopes people will reflect on Remembrance Day.
Well, I hope they remember how much it cost for us to have our freedom. You know, that most of them don't realize, and how easily it could be lost again if they don't, you know, wake up and live and vote and look after things, because we were in a bad shape when at the beginning of the war, and we nearly lost our freedom, and we suffered for 5 years, and it took, and after that Britain took a while to get on its feet again. So they say the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and that's what I feel. And it takes me back to the war too, and we had a cathedral in our town that would be full of servicemen at that service, and but it was quite emotional then because we were in a war and we hoped to win, and the men were hoping to survive, all of them. You have to really live through a war to know how traumatic it can be, you know. Anyway, we hope people wake up and protect their freedoms. I said I identify with Ukraine, and I'm very glad we're helping them. Because I'm sure Putin will be just like Hitler. He won't be happy with one country. I can understand all those Eastern European countries that were occupied by Russia for a while. They don't want to go back under a dictator. They want their freedom and democracy. And even though it's not perfect democracy, there's all kinds of faults, it's surely much better than being under someone like Hitler or Putin. This is the way I feel about it anyway.